specifically thinking about academic research, that's why we're here. We're all researchers interested in publishing. What are some ways that researchers have explored in the past or are currently doing using generative AI?
The one thing I've been most interested in lately is thinking about generative AI as a sort of interlocutor or taking on a particular role. So you can ask it to assume a role through which to evaluate your work, a critic, an advocate, someone whose work you are critiquing. And so I think that can be a helpful way of augmenting what you're already doing in your research.
Giovanni, you wanted to go? Okay, I just wanted to add to what Lisa mentioned rightly, that generative AI is generating content based on whatever it is trained against. And in most cases, for academic publishing, it's going to be text. So I think one of the use cases would be to use it to improve the language, for example, to edit and polish the narrative of the research that is going to be reported. And that's one of the benefits everyone is talking about at the moment. That makes also publishing or dissemination of science more inclusive, specifically for people who are not comfortable in writing in English.
Thank you, Bahar and Lisa, for bringing this out. So one of the things that, in my opinion, has to consider is that we don't have only the light on generative AI. Unfortunately, generative AI could potentially be used for any other possible, I would say, not kosher use, specifically for academics. Our team, over the past 7 months, has reviewed using a living systematic methodology, the research output for generative AI, ChatGPT, large language models over the past 7-8 months. And what we saw is that there was a huge interest of the academic, all the academic society and the academic endeavors for trying to figure it out how generative AI could potentially be used. And of course, it can be the perfect co-pilot. It can help you, specifically for people like me that are not English speaker. You will never know that, but in general, it can help you a lot. On the other side, and also, of course, it can be useful for other tasks. But on the other side, the nature of generative AI could potentially sometimes be misleading for those researchers who want to find out a shortcut for research and for academics. And this is something that we have to consider and we have to protect. I'm pretty sure that all of you knows that in the late 90s, what happened with the photo manipulation, and we are still paying the price for that. Right now, there are since that there are no regulations. Let me give you an example. I was during a meeting very recently. I was talking to a friend of mine that is in academics with me, and he was telling me, "Oh, Gio, I mean, I was literally, I have been invited from a journal to do a review of a paper, and I don't have time. So you know what? I copy and pasted. I'm not kidding. I copy and pasted the paper on ChatGPT, and ChatGPT actually gave me a full review of the manuscript. So besides the fact that it's totally unethical, this is actually bringing on the table that the fact that generative AI acts or seems to be as a human actually is not. And at the end of the day, as Andrew was mentioning, of course, generative AI is able to generate something, but at the end is regenerating something, which is totally different. The main difference between us and generative AI right now, at least, is the fact that we have the consciousness of creating something new. Generative AI, at the end of the day, is you have always the same ingredients. It's like an Italian recipe. I mean, you can do a lot of different recipes with the same ingredients. The taste can be different a little bit, but everything depends on the ingredient that you use.
I wanted to add,
yeah, go ahead.
One thing, so I think this is excellent. And you can see that we're really focused on how are people using generative AI to write or to write a peer review and the ethics of this. And this is the main part of the discussion. And I think why a lot of people are here today. But I think it's worth pointing out that these generative methods and algorithms have a lot of hardcore research uses that are separate from, and there's a gradation in between. So like generative adversarial networks, very technical concept, but have a super powerful research in terms of disease classification, big data manipulation. Generative methods are often used in very technical ways for image analysis. And there are researchers who are finding, in the context of super technical pipelines, perhaps understanding materials properties, that somewhere in the middle, they can just plug in ChatGPT and things get better. Those are, in some ways, a slightly separate conversation, because that comes down to the basics of peer review, right? What do peer reviewers look for? How do we look for openness? How do we look for rigor? But I think that that is an equally important conversation in addition to writing text, manipulating, and some of these both the sort of this, it's the soft and the hard science, even though I don't really like those terms. Maybe.
Bahar, go ahead.
I wanted to just echo everything that Gio and Andrew mentioned, and also add that the current tools available, like ChatGPT and other LLMs, are by nature created to be convincing, not truthful. And that goes totally against scientific behavior or creation of scientific document. And being mindful of that is quite an important item to be aware of when we are talking about their usage in any kind of evaluation of scientific method, which is based on truth, at least truth of the things that are reported. And another thing is the opaque kind of process behind these tools that is against, again, good practice in science. Science is promoting transparency and openness. And while these tools are not being transparent and quite clear on how they are generating the material, are going to be harmful for a good science output. And an example would be that even a single prompt phrased differently in tools can generate a totally different output, and that makes the integrity of whatever comes out of these tools questionable. So we need to consider all these items before considering these tools as something that helps evaluating of research.
Yeah, thanks everyone. I think that was a really insightful answer to that question. And certainly, as you can already tell, there's some useful, some ethical ways of using these programs and some that are less so. We'll certainly get into that later in our talk.